All right, let's get started. How's it going, Rob? So, this video is about the right use of power and who is worth your rage. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is because I've noticed that even within myself, I can feel this intensity of rage coming up for me more frequently than it has in the past. And it made me think about why that might be. Now, it could be because I'm getting older because, sometimes people get older and they just get tired of things and then they just get upset because they're just like, hey, I'm tired of this crap. I've been through this long enough. Could be that. I've also thought about the fact that I have had a lot of experiences where I've tried other alternatives to communicate to people that have been more diplomatic, let's say, and just kind of came to the end of like, I don't think this diplomacy is working that well. And so it could be that. And then I started thinking about this instance where this kid, when I was in like high school, somebody mentioned that I seemed to barely ever get upset. And they said, Pedro almost never gets upset. I never have seen him angry. And this one person that I didn't even know, she paid attention to me, said, oh, the reason why Pedro doesn't get upset with us is because he doesn't think we're worth his anger. And I was like, huh. And I had never thought that thought. But when she said it, I thought about it for a minute and I was like, I think she's right. I don't think these people are worth getting angry over. So I'm just not getting angry. And so I got curious about why did I feel like they weren't worth getting angry over? And I realized it's because I have long subscribed to this teaching of Jesus that said, forgive them for they know not what they do. And so when he was under this extreme pressure, death, he still was able to hold this place in consciousness where he was able to forgive people because he thought, well, hey, these people don't, if they had better information, they wouldn't be doing what they're doing. And since they are doing this thing, it's proof that they don't have good enough information. And therefore, it's not worth holding anything against them because they just don't have the wisdom or whatever they need to make a better decision. And so with some of the people that I was engaging with in my life at that time, I had observed that they didn't seem to have the information that they needed to make clearer decisions than the decisions they were making. They were under an oppressive system. They hadn't been exposed to a lot of different people or a lot of different ideas, and they just went after things that were different. And a lot of times that meant people picking on me or bullying me or trying to bully me, I guess, because I had a different cultural background and my father was an immigrant and I had this strange name and all these other things. And so I just was like, they're just not worth getting mad at. But then I noticed that there were some people that I did get angry with. And when I got angry with them, my anger could go very high. And I didn't really pay attention to why that was until I got older. And I realized that the people who I got angry with the most were the people who agreed with me on a certain standard of how we were going to behave with one another. And if they violated that agreement, then I would get angry because I would think to myself, there's no reason for us to have this experience because we've already agreed on a certain way of being in a relationship with each other. That's why if you're in a relationship with somebody, like I've seen this happen before where people will date somebody that they know is promiscuous, right? And then they think now that I'm in a relationship with this person, they're going to stop being promiscuous. And so there's this agreement that now that we're in a relationship together, there's some exclusivity. And even though I've known you to be a promiscuous person in the past, I'm going to make the assumption that because we have this agreement, you will no longer participate in that behavior. And then when they do, the people get upset. Now you could say, could you get upset? You met them knowing they were like this. But the reason why the person will get upset is because there was some agreement. And so I realized that the people that I got upset with were the people with whom I presumed there was some agreement. Like the first time I really started noticing some anger popping out of me was when I was in the military, because we all subscribe to this thing called the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And so in my mind, since we all subscribe to the UCMJ, I thought, okay, we've all subscribed to this code of conduct and this way that we're going to behave with one another. It's a standard upon which we have all been in agreement. And so when there is a contest about behavior and what's on right and what's wrong and those sorts of things, we can just go to this document, we could check it out, and the person who's being inconsistent with the UCMJ is wrong, and the person is being consistent with the UCMJ is right. However, I found, because of the same things that happen out in the world outside of the context of the military, the racism, misogyny, yada, 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 those cultural things actually overwhelmed the UCMJ that we all agreed upon. And so I found myself checking people with a highlighter, highlighting the UCMJ, and then saying, see, according to the UCMJ, you are a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Hi, Shelly or Chelly Blue. So I'm talking about who's worth getting angry with. And the point that I made up to this point is that I get angry with people with whom I assume there's some agreement on how we're going to relate to each other. If there's no agreement on how we're going to relate to each other, then I don't bother getting angry because there's no reason for me according to the way I think. And I was using the military as an example because we all subscribe to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and it basically outlined the rules of conduct. So whenever I was in an encounter with people, which I had way too many in the military, from the commander to the lowest ranking person, I saw people who did not fall in line with the Uniform Code of Military Justice. They didn't even fall in line with what would make you be a good person. And I was like frustrated with people. And I was saying, I used to not really get angry with people because we had no agreement. But when I went into the military, I noticed I started getting angrier because of people violating the things that they said that they stood by. There was one instance where I I'll say I had very sharp words with somebody who threatened me and was in violation of some things. And this dude ended up choking me. And he was 6'4", and I'm 5'4". And he literally grabbed me by my throat. But my rage, because of all the violations he was doing, and then when he put his hands on me, I just, like, even though he had his hand around my throat, I just looked at him while he was choking me and still was talking. And I said, so you think you're tough? You 6'4" and I'm 5'4". You're a weak piece of shit. And then everybody was shocked that I was still talking while this dude was choking me. And then he looked like the weakling that he was, and he let go of me because I think it started hitting him like, oh shoot, I just choked this dude. And then when our instructor had us both in a meeting, they tried to make me apologize. And I was like, what? I'm supposed to apologize? This dude has done all these things wrong and then punctuated them with choking me. And they still wanted me to apologize because he was technically outranked me, and maybe because he was taller than me. I don't know what their line of thinking was. And they told me that if I didn't apologize, I was going to get what they call recycled and go back to the beginning of our training program and start over because I was subversive to the order in the group. And I was like, oh, well, I didn't even care. I didn't even care. I was just going, you're going to have to just do it then. And they told me to shake the guy's hand, and I wouldn't do it. I refused to shake his hand. And then the instructor asked me why wouldn't I shake his hand. And as I was like thinking about this, the rage kept building up more because I was like, I shouldn't even be in this conversation right now. This guy is the one that has violated all these things. This guy is the one who choked me. This guy is the jerk. And now I'm the one that's supposed to apologize. I'm the one that's getting threatened with recycling and all these other things. And then I just said, I'm not doing it. And they said, why not? And then I said, because if I do, I'm probably going to punch this dude in the face. And then that made it even worse. And they yelled at me and told me, get out. But another reason why I felt that is because the other dude was black, just like me. So I felt like there was an agreement, like some social agreement of how he and I should be in relationship with one another. But because he got intoxicated with the power of being in charge, he lost his ever loving mind. Or ever hating mind. And so I could not deal with that. And all of the agreements that were violated is what led to me being enraged and not caring about the consequences. And then in the end, they didn't even do anything to me. And the drill instructor later apologized to me and told me they used to pick on me because I was small anyway. And then he told me, Silva, I owe you an apology. You're a man, Silva, like I needed his validation. But at any rate, that was the situation. And that's where the anger came from. So that my point is that when you have agreements with folks that you're going to behave in a certain way, then your anger is justified when the people when they violate that. But then once you realize that that person is incapable of holding those standards, then as the Bible says, take your peace and go. So if you realize that, like, the initial anger is that you think the person's capable because y'all made this agreement. Then when they violate the agreement and you realize that they are not worth your anger, take your anger back, because anger is actually an emotional investment in the possibility of someone doing better. Like Dr. King said, there can't be great disappointment without great love. And I would venture to say that the same is true about anger, that sometimes we get enraged or bothered with people because we believe that they can do better. But once you realize they can't do better, you should withdraw your anger energy from that person, distance yourself from that person or group or whatever it is as much as possible, and invest your positive energy into creating something better. But you got to be mindful of that. And you also have to be mindful that all of your emotions are power. A lot of us don't realize that our emotions are power. And even though I'm talking about rage now, we could talk about all the emotions. Who's worth your sadness? Who's worth your joy? Who's worth your fear? And if you have a proper awareness of your emotional intelligence and know how your expressions of emotions are actual investments in a future possibility or a healing of the past or something like that, and you realize the context of the relationship and the folks that are in the relationships, and you find that they're either not in agreement or in violation of the agreement, then you can determine with some discipline who's worth your emotional investment, whether it be rage or otherwise. And I think that the more we start to develop our relational capacities and understand our emotional uh, kind of content or emotional intelligence, we will get better at where we put our energy and where we invest it. And we will be able to be more intentional about the emotional states that we create, because we'll know, hey, if I'm around these types of people and I experience joy and that's what I want more of, then that's who I'll be around. And if I'm around these people, I experience anger and I don't want to experience that thing. So I won't be around those people, but not to the degree that you're just trying to be comfortable all the time, but the degree that you're trying to be intentional about the world that you're trying to create. So I have to go to a meeting in 1 minute, so I'm going to go now. But I really appreciate you hearing this now, and those of you who will hear in the future. And I'm going to continue. I'm starting to really enjoy making these videos. I used to really like writing more because I could control basically what I was saying. But this is just coming off the top of my head, and I'm really starting to appreciate that. And I appreciate those of you who have the patience as I walk through and kind of get clear on what it is I'm thinking. So I look forward to whenever the inspiration hits me to make another video. And I'm also continuing to write as well. And I hope to have a book coming out in the next few months. So peace. Thank you. Have a great day.